Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're going to tackle a really big question, one that's been thrown into the spotlight by a major Hollywood controversy. Who actually owns a story? Okay, so this whole thing is centered around the Oscar shortlisted film Homebound, and you've got two very different sides to this. On one hand, you have author Pooja Changawala, who's claiming that Dharma Productions just blatantly ripped off her novel. I mean, we're talking specific scenes, dialogue, even the core structure. But then, on the other side, the studio's saying, nope, absolutely baseless. They're firm that their movie is a totally legal adaptation of a New York Times article, and they say they have all the rights locked down.
You know, a dispute like this really makes you think. It forces us to look past just the basic idea of a plot and zoom in on that one thing you can't just license or borrow, and that's the craft, the how. So yeah, let's dive right in. Right, because a story, it isn't just, this happened, then this happened. Not at all. It's really about the thousands of tiny, deliberate choices that a creator makes. Everything from the writing to the design to the performances. All of it comes together to build a world that we can get completely lost in. I mean, just think about it for a second. The best storytellers, they build worlds that feel so real. You look at a film like Dhurandhar, and the production design is so on point, so meticulous, that the city itself basically becomes a main character. Or take Kantara, which creates a world that just feels alive, like it's living and breathing around you. And sometimes craft is all about perspective. Like in Good Boy, where they build tension by showing us everything from a dog's point of view. Or a movie like Weapons, which gives us all these different viewpoints to slowly piece together a mystery. It's all about how they choose to tell it. Okay, let's switch gears for a second. Think about a genre like the war film, right? It's got all the technical power you could ever want. We're talking massive, sweeping shots, really visceral action, incredible sound. The works. But is all that technical craft, is that enough to make a film truly great? Well, a review for the film 120 Bahadur really hits the nail on the head here. It points out that the missing piece so often is emotional force. You can have the most epic battle story, but if the screenplay doesn't make you feel the stakes, if it doesn't connect with you, then all that amazing craft just can't carry the film on its own. And this right here is such a perfect illustration of a core truth about what makes stories work. So here's the really crucial point. The best, most effective craft is usually the stuff you don't even notice. It's basically invisible. It doesn't scream, hey, look at me. Instead, it just quietly creates a story that's so authentic, so deeply rooted in its world, that we completely forget we're even watching a movie. But this whole idea of rootedness, it isn't just some random gut feeling for creators. It's actually part of a really deep, kind of theoretical blueprint that storytellers have been using for centuries to make these connections with us. And it all comes down to this one core concept, mimesis. Now, I know, it sounds like a fancy word, but the idea behind it is actually pretty simple. It's all about this question, how does a story choose to represent or mirror the real world? And believe me, the choices a storyteller makes here, they are absolutely fundamental. And what's so fascinating is that there's no single right way to do it, not at all. Storytellers use all these different modes of representation to get completely different effects. And, of course, to send very different messages. So on one end of the spectrum, you've got direct, almost hard-coded allegory. A perfect example is Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels. There, it's a really clear one-to-one mapping. The whole fight about which end of an egg to crack, that's a direct stand-in for the real-world religious wars between Catholic France and Protestant England. The message is super satirical, very poignant. But then, on the other hand, you have writers like J.R.R. Tolkien. He completely rejected that kind of direct allegory. What did he do instead? Well, he absorbed his own religious and moral beliefs right into the very fabric, the symbolism of Middle-earth. The contrast here is just, it's so striking, right? One way it gives you a code that you have to crack, and the other gives you a world that you just feel. And this choice, how you represent reality, it also totally shapes what a story is trying to do, what its purpose is. Is it going after what we might call flawed human nature? Like in a Charles Dickens novel, where the message is often something like, hey, the world would be a decent place if only individuals behaved more decently. Or is it critiquing the entire system? Is it arguing that the economic or political structure itself is the real problem, and that just being a kind person, well, that's not going to be enough to fix it? Okay, so we've gone from plagiarism disputes all the way to some pretty deep literary theory. But why? Why does any of this actually matter? Why should we care so much about how stories are put together? Well, it's because stories are maybe our most important tool for trying to understand this incredibly complex world we live in. They're how we process different points of view. They're what remind us that our own perspective is never, ever the whole story. I mean, think about it. Every single person, every event has these layers of mystery that you just can't solve from one single angle. And this brings us right back to where we started. A critic said something really powerful about the film Homebound. Yeah, the very film that sparked this whole thing. They said the best stories, they don't preach at you. They don't hand you easy answers on a silver platter. All they do is hold up a mirror. They force us to see ourselves and our society more clearly, and then they just leave it up to us to figure out what we see in that reflection. Because ultimately, the stories we tell have just immense power. Seriously. They shape our beliefs, they shape our identities, they shape our nations. They can absolutely be weaponized to create conflict. You just build a narrative around money or religion or ideology. And this is the important part, that exact same power can be used to build empathy, to build understanding, and maybe even to build peace. And so that leaves us with one final, really crucial thought to chew on. Every single story we choose to watch or read or share or create, it's an act of construction. We are all taking part, whether we realize it or not, in literally building the reality we all live in. So the real question we have to ask ourselves is, what kind of world are we building?